Right, as we talk about whether you as a financial advisor want to add crypto, Bitcoin, DeFi, Web3, whatever you want to call it, to your practice and understand it, we have to be really honest and talk about some of the negatives surrounding crypto, some of the things that people talk about and some of those negatives. And one of those negatives that we have to talk about is the criminal aspect, and that goes back to Silk Road. If you don't know what Silk Road is or was, Silk Road was a website on the dark web where a guy named Ross Ulbricht decided he wanted to sell magic mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and this was, quite a while ago, starting in 2010, 2011, I believe. Wanted to have this website to be able to sell these mushrooms. And eventually Silk Road, this dark website, became a website where not only could you buy magic mushrooms, you could buy all sorts of harder drugs from pretty much anywhere in the world and have them shipped to you. You could buy guns. You could eventually buy people, I believe. There was even allegations that I've heard of assassination attempts, things like that, that were paid for, that were arranged and paid for via this website. Now, of course, when you're trading those things, you can't use regular banks. You can't pay with your credit card. You can't send money from your bank or anything like that. So they had to find a different way to actually pay for these items. And the way they chose was Bitcoin. Now, keep in mind, this was 2010, 2011, 2012. The government, the FBI, didn't know anything about Bitcoin and how it worked. So these people that wanted to buy and sell drugs, buy and sell guns, whatever else that might be illegal, had to use some sort of financial system that was outside of the regular traditional financial system. They couldn't go through banks and credit cards and everything like that because they know it would get shut down. They know they would be caught. And so they use Bitcoin. Now, that's not to say that Bitcoin isn't imminently traceable. It's just that no one knew how to do it. The government didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to do it. So Silk Road was trading millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin for illegal goods for years. Now, what do we know? What do we learn from that? Well, eventually, I'll say this. Eventually, the FBI figured it out. They figured out how to trace Bitcoin transactions, which, by the way, is very easy, but they figured out how to trace it. They caught Ross. They caught Silk Road. Ross Ulbricht is actually in jail, currently still in jail as a crime kingpin. And most of the Bitcoin that was confiscated by the government has been auctioned off. But what did we learn from that? Well, one, the FBI and the government learned how to trace it and track it and learned how traceable it can be. They learned that they can look at every transaction ever on the Bitcoin network and trace that Bitcoin back to some wallet and usually eventually some person based on KYC, AML, things like that. We also learned overall is the idea of Bitcoin was created so that we could have a financial system so that you and I could transact value without having to go through a bank. And who else has to transact something of value without having to go through banking systems, regulated banking systems, than those that are trying to buy and sell things that are not legal to buy and sell? So of course they found Bitcoin. Now that's not to say that Bitcoin continues to be used for such nefarious purposes because the government has found it. They know that it's very traceable, and we've talked about that kind of ad nauseum, that there really isn't a criminal aspect to Bitcoin anymore, a money laundering aspect to Bitcoin, because it is so traceable. It's so easy for the government to figure out who's doing what. But what it told us is there is a need to transact value outside of the traditional banking system. So let's look and see who else has that need. Well, maybe people that don't have access to a traditional banking system. You probably watching this, and I here in the West don't have that much need to transact outside the banking system, right? You and I are probably not usually buying things that are not legal. We're probably not doing too many things that are illegal. And if you remember, go back to the early days of the internet, the early days of the World Wide Web, most of us didn't use it. It was just a glorified newspaper, glorified magazines, and occasionally you could buy and sell things like books or Pez dispensers or something. But it was really adopted heavily. The early web was adopted heavily by gambling and porn, two things that were either illegal or frowned upon quite a bit. But those industries got it because they said, look, this is another way to distribute. This is another way to get money before the government, before the authorities get a hold of it. And those two industries are obviously not the only two industries that have thrived. They did profit from the early days of the internet, but they also helped push it forward. They helped push forward things like video online, probably faster than we would have had otherwise, because they found the need first. And then what they drove, the rest of us said, oh, okay, we like the idea of having video. I like the idea of being able to watch TV and movies and highlights and everything on my computer over the internet. And that's kind of where we are today. So let's go back to our crypto Bitcoin discussion. So there are people elsewhere in the world that are not here in the West, that don't have access to good banking systems, that don't want to deposit their fiat currency in a bank, but they need to be able to transact financially with the rest of the world, because the the internet has given us the ability to connect and to sell things and to transact financially with anyone in the world, but the money system hasn't kept up. But what we see from Silk Road is those that cannot use the traditional banking system will choose this other system. And those that can't use the traditional banking system might be those in countries where the government can just go confiscate their money if they want to, in countries where the government routinely devalues their currency. It might be people who are in areas where they don't trust their banks. Maybe the bank is going to steal their money, or again, their currency is being devalued regularly. All these people that don't have trust in their government or don't have trust in their banking systems, which is billions and billions of people around the world, or people that just want to be able to transact efficiently. They want to be able to sell goods from where they are in their country to you and I in our country, but the current system makes it inefficient to do so. The crypto system, the Bitcoin, the DeFi system gives them the ability to actually transact for value without having to go through traditional banking rails, because those banking rails mean that those people are not able to participate. It means that they're not able to participate efficiently and not able to run their business. But we have systems like Bitcoin, like ETH, like Solana, that give you and I the ability to transact with anyone anywhere in the world quickly, efficiently, hopefully safely and securely. And that is the adoption that's going to come. So Silk Road was a bad incident. It's the one that our government, our people in Congress, whether they're Senate or the House, routinely look at and go, see, only criminals are using crypto. But the reality is very, very, very few criminals now are using Bitcoin or using crypto because it's so traceable, because the FBI knows about it, because most governments around the world know how to trace it. So they're not using it for that. But those that cannot use the traditional banking systems, either because it's too inefficient or because they can't trust their home bank, their bank in their country, in their area, they can't trust their own government, they have to use some system that is not the traditional system that we're used to. They are going to choose the crypto, the blockchain systems, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or some mashup of all of those. They're going to choose those because it's there. Again, just like we saw with the internet, gambling and porn started it and really progressed it forward. And then the rest of us started adopting later when we saw the applications and the need. Same thing happened with crypto. The criminal outskirts, they're the ones who started utilizing it and showed that it was possible to pay for things with Bitcoin, that someone would accept it for value for something else. Now we're going to see those elsewhere in the world go, oh, we like that idea. I like the idea that even if I'm not buying something illegal, I can still have transactions. I can still transact financially with someone anywhere else in the world and not have to go through the banking system that's going to charge me a lot of fees and have a lot of friction, and someone might confiscate my money or something. And now they're able to use the crypto rails to do that. So again, Silk Road was a bad incident. We've learned from it. The good part that we've learned is people who don't have access to traditional systems or can't use them because they're inefficient are naturally going to move towards something that is available that allows them to do what they need to do financially in the world. Those systems are the crypto systems.